The funeral home smelled like lilies and regret. I stood in the back of the viewing room, watching relatives I hadn't seen in years gather around Grandma's casket. She looked peaceful, finally free from the cancer that had eaten away at her for the past 18 months. I'd visited her every week during those final months, sometimes twice a week when things got really bad. Most of the family hadn't bothered. But here they were now, dressed in their expensive black clothes, dabbing at dry eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. I wore a simple black dress I'd bought specifically for this occasion. Nothing flashy. Nothing that would draw attention. That's how I preferred it these days. Invisible, unremarkable, forgettable. My cousin Michelle stood near the casket holding court like she always did. She wore a designer black suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her PR firm had been doing well lately, or so I'd heard through the family grapevine. Prestige PR group, she called it. She'd started it 5 years ago with money from her trust fund and somehow managed not to run it into the ground. I didn't know much about her business. I made it a point not to know. Sarah. Aunt Linda spotted me and waved me over. Come here, sweetheart. We haven't seen you in forever. I plastered on a polite smile and made my way through the crowd. Several relatives patted my shoulder or squeezed my hand as I passed. I'd been close to Grandma in a way most of them hadn't bothered to be, and they all knew it. How are you holding up? Aunt Linda asked, pulling me into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and wine. I'm okay, I said quietly. She's not in pain anymore. That's what matters. Such a sweet girl, Aunt Linda said, patting my cheek. Your grandmother loved you so much. Michelle appeared at my elbow, her smile sharp as a knife. Sarah, I'm so glad you could make it. I wasn't sure if you'd be able to afford the trip. I felt the room shift slightly. Several relatives turned to look at us. It's only an hour's drive, Michelle, I said evenly. Gas isn't that expensive. She laughed, a little too loud for a funeral home. Oh, of course. I just meant with your situation. Grandma was always worried about you, you know. She used to tell me how concerned she was that you couldn't seem to hold down a steady job. My jaw tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. Grandma and I talked every week. She never mentioned being worried. Well, she wouldn't tell you that, would she? Michelle's voice dripped with false sympathy. She was too kind. But she confided in me. She said you were always asking for money, always struggling. It broke her heart. That was a lie. A complete bald-faced lie. I'd never asked Grandma for a penny. In fact, I'd been the one quietly paying for her home health care during those final months when Medicare wouldn't cover everything. But I'd done it anonymously, through a medical charity fund I'd set up specifically for that purpose. Michelle didn't know that. Nobody did. I never asked Grandma for money, I said softly. Of course you didn't ask directly, Michelle said, her voice carrying across the room now. Several more relatives had turned to listen. But she knew you needed it. He was always so generous with you. Too generous if you ask me. Uncle Robert joined our little circle. Everything all right here, girls? Oh, fine, Michelle said breezily. We were just talking about Sarah's circumstances. So sad, really. Grandma tried so hard to help her get on her feet, but some people just can't seem to make it work, you know? I felt my face flush, but I kept my voice steady. I'm doing fine, Michelle. But thank you for your concern. Are you, though? She tilted her head, her eyes glittering with something ugly. Because Grandma told me you were living in a tiny apartment, driving an old car, working random jobs. She said she sent you money every month just so you could make rent. More lies. Grandma had never sent me money. If anything, I'd been the one supporting her, though she'd never known it either. Michelle, Aunt Linda said quietly, maybe this isn't the time. I'm just being honest, Michelle said, cutting her off. Sarah needs to hear this. We all enabled her for too long and now look where she is. Living off handouts. She said the last part loudly enough that the entire room could hear. It's honestly embarrassing. The room went silent. I felt every eye turn toward me. I saw pity in some faces, judgment in others, uncomfortable embarrassment in the rest. My cousin Mark looked down at his shoes. Aunt Patricia whispered something to Uncle James. Even the funeral director looked uncomfortable, hovering near the door like he wasn't sure if he should intervene. Michelle wasn't done. I mean, I hate to say it at Grandma's wake, but someone has to be honest with her. She's 32 years old and she has nothing to show for it. No career, no savings, no stability. Just constantly relying on family charity to get by. It's pathetic. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger. I was beyond anger at this point. Just a calm, crystal-clear certainty about what I needed to do. I looked at Michelle for a long moment. She stared back at me with triumph in her eyes, clearly pleased with herself for putting me in my place in front of everyone. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said quietly. Then I turned and walked toward Grandma's casket. I placed my hand on the smooth wood and closed my eyes, saying a silent goodbye to the woman who'd actually known me, actually cared about me, actually bothered to call me every week just to hear about my day. I didn't say anything to the rest of the family as I left. Nobody tried to stop me. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. Through the funeral home windows I could see Michelle still holding court, probably continuing to trash-talk me now that I wasn't there to defend myself. I pulled out my phone and opened my encrypted messaging app. Found the contact labeled J. Patterson Corporate Accounts. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard for just a second. Then I typed, "Terminate all contracts with Prestige PR Group immediately. Effective today. No extensions, no grace period." I hit send and set my phone down on the passenger seat. Then I started my car, my old car, that happened to be a 3-year-old Lexus I'd paid cash for, though I kept it clean and understated, and pulled out of the parking lot. My phone started buzzing before I reached the main road. I glanced at the screen. J. Patterson was calling me back, probably to confirm the instruction. I'd given him standing orders to execute any termination requests immediately without question. He'd been managing my corporate investment accounts for 6 years now and knew better than to hesitate when I gave a direct order. I answered on Bluetooth. "Yes. Ms. Chin, confirming termination of all contracts with Prestige PR Group. This includes the $2.8 million annual retainer for corporate communication services across all subsidiary companies, correct?" "Correct. That's going to leave some gaps in coverage for the quarterly earnings announcements. Handle it internally or find a replacement firm. I want them completely cut off within the hour." "Understood. I'll send the termination notices now and begin the transition process." "Should I provide a reason for the termination?" "No reason necessary. The contracts all have 30-day termination clauses, but I'm invoking the immediate termination provision. Pay them for the current month and nothing more. Consider it done. I'll send you the confirmation documentation within 2 hours." "Thank you, James." I hung up and merged onto the highway. My phone buzzed again almost immediately. This time it was a different number, one I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. Another unknown number. Then another. Someone was trying very hard to reach me. I had a pretty good idea who. 20 minutes later I was home. I lived in a tiny apartment, as Michelle had described it to the family. What she didn't know was that my tiny apartment was actually a 2,500 square foot penthouse in a building I owned. I kept the outside unremarkable and the lobby modest. Most people assumed it was just another mid-range apartment complex. I preferred it that way. I kicked off my heels and poured myself a glass of wine. My phone had 15 missed calls now and counting. I pulled up my voicemail and listened to the first one. "Hi, this is Michelle Carter from Prestige PR Group. I'm trying to reach someone regarding our corporate accounts. We received some termination notices that I think were sent in error. Could someone please call me back as soon as possible? This is extremely urgent." Her voice was tight, professional, but I could hear the edge of panic underneath. The next voicemail was similar, but more desperate. The third one was her starting to realize this wasn't an error. By the 6th voicemail she was practically begging. I deleted all of them without finishing and blocked her number. Then I poured myself another glass of wine and sat down at my laptop. I had work to do, actual work, not the random jobs Michelle had described to our family. I opened my portfolio management dashboard and reviewed the day's numbers. My investments were doing well. The tech sector was up, which was good for my holdings in 3 different startup companies. The real estate portfolio was stable. The medical technology fund I'd started last year was starting to show real returns. All told, my net worth was somewhere in the neighborhood of $47 million. Not bad for someone living off handouts. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. Aunt Linda. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. I answered. Sarah, honey, I'm so sorry about what happened earlier. Aunt Linda sounded genuinely distressed. Michelle was completely out of line. I wanted to call and check on you. I'm fine, Aunt Linda. Thank you for calling. I don't know what got into her. She's been so stressed lately with her business, but that's no excuse for what she said to you. In front of everyone at your grandmother's wake. It was horrible. It's okay. Really? It's not okay. She humiliated you, and for what? To make herself feel superior? I'm so angry with her right now I could just... She cut herself off. Listen, I want you to know that not everyone believes what she said. Your grandmother loved you dearly and she was so proud of you. My throat tightened. Thank you. That means a lot. And another thing. Michelle's been calling everyone in the family asking if anyone knows how to reach some corporate investment firm. Something about her biggest client terminating their contract? He seems to think there's been some kind of mistake. Do you know anything about that? I took a sip of wine. Can't say that I do. Well, she's in a complete panic. Apparently this client represented a huge portion of her business. She's calling everyone, even people who would have no reason to know anything about corporate contracts. It's bizarre. That does sound stressful for her. Between you and me, Aunt Linda lowered her voice, I hope she's worried. Maybe it'll teach her some humility. The way she spoke to you today. I'm ashamed to call her my niece. We talked for a few more minutes before I made an excuse to get off the phone. Aunt Linda meant well, but I needed to be alone with my thoughts. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere out there, Michelle was having the worst day of her professional life. I didn't feel particularly good about it. But I didn't feel bad about it either. The truth was, I'd been funding Michelle's business for 3 years without her knowledge. It started accidentally. I'd been looking for a PR firm to handle communications for one of my subsidiary companies, a medical device manufacturer that needed help with a product launch. One of my managers had recommended Prestige PR Group. I hadn't made the connection to Michelle at first. I never used my family name in business and I operated through a complex network of LLCs and holding companies. By the time I realized it was Michelle's firm, they were already doing good work. I'd been impressed, actually. She had talent, even if she was insufferable on a personal level. So I'd kept the contract in place. Then another one of my companies needed PR services. And another. Before long, Prestige PR Group was handling communications for 6 different companies I owned or had significant stakes in. They didn't know all those companies were connected. They thought they'd just gotten lucky with several different clients. Michelle thought she'd built her success through her own merit and talent. She had no idea her estranged cousin was the one paying most of her bills. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd watched her business grow over the past 3 years. Watched her hire more employees, move into a bigger office, take on smaller clients now that the big accounts were steady. She'd done well for herself and I'd been genuinely happy for her despite our strained family relationship. But then she'd decided to humiliate me at Grandma's funeral. In front of everyone. Calling me a charity case. Saying I lived off handouts. Claiming Grandma had been embarrassed by my lack of success. All while her own success existed because of the handouts I'd been giving her. $2.8 million worth of handouts every year. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not hot anger. Cold anger. The kind that crystallizes into absolute certainty. She'd made her choice. Now she'd live with the consequences. Over the next 3 days, I monitored the situation from a distance. James Patterson, my corporate accounts manager, sent me regular updates. Prestige PR Group had immediately tried to negotiate an extension of the contracts, offering discounted rates and additional services. When that didn't work, Michelle had attempted to speak directly with the CEOs of the various companies. None of them had any idea why the contracts were being terminated. The orders had come from higher up. From holding companies they reported to, from investment firms that owned controlling shares, from the complex corporate structures I'd built specifically to maintain privacy and control. Michelle couldn't figure out who was actually behind the termination orders. She couldn't fight an enemy she couldn't identify. By day 3, she'd lost 3 of her smaller clients as well. Once word got out that she'd lost several major accounts simultaneously, other clients got nervous about her firm's stability. It was a death spiral. Losing big clients made her look unreliable, which caused her to lose more clients, which made her look even more unreliable. I should have felt satisfied. Dad, I just felt tired. On day 4, I got a call from Uncle Robert. Sarah, we need to talk about Michelle. I sighed. Uncle Robert, I really don't want to get involved in family drama right now. This isn't drama. This is serious. Michelle's business is falling apart. She's lost something like 60% of her revenue in less than a week. She's talking about having to lay off most of her employees. I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't see what it has to do with me. She thinks you did this. I paused. Excuse me. She came to me yesterday absolutely hysterical. She said all of this started right after the wake, right after after what she said to you. She thinks you somehow orchestrated this. That you're behind the contract terminations. I laughed, though there was no humor in it. Uncle Robert, Michelle just told our entire family that I'm a broke charity case living off handouts. And now she thinks I have the power to destroy her multi-million-dollar business? Which is it? Am I pathetic and poor, or am I some kind of corporate mastermind? I know it sounds crazy. It sounds insane. I'm a nobody, remember? That's what Michelle has always thought. That's what she told everyone at Grandma's wake. So how exactly would a nobody like me have the power to do anything to her business? Uncle Robert was quiet for a moment. Sarah, are you okay? You sound different. I'm fine. I'm just tired of being treated like the family embarrassment when I've done nothing wrong. Michelle humiliated me at our grandmother's funeral, and now she's looking for someone to blame for her own business problems. I'm not interested in being her scapegoat. She wants to apologize. Great. She can apologize. Will you talk to her? Maybe meet for coffee? No. Sarah. No, Uncle Robert. She made it very clear what she thinks of me. She can apologize if it makes her feel better, but I'm not interested in reconciling with someone who thinks I'm a pathetic leech. She's family. So am I. But that didn't stop her from trashing me in front of everyone when it suited her. I hung up before he could respond. Michelle tried calling me directly that evening. I didn't answer. She sent a text. Sarah, please call me. I need to talk to you. It's important. I didn't respond. Another text. I know you're angry about what I said. I'm sorry. I was stressed and I took it out on you. Please, I just need 5 minutes. Still no response. Then, my business is falling apart. I don't know what's happening. If you know anything, if you can help in any way, please. I'm begging you. I stared at that last text for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. To let her suffer the way she'd made me suffer. To let her business collapse and her carefully constructed life fall apart. But another part of me, the part that sounded like Grandma's voice, whispered that this had gone far enough. I poured myself another glass of wine and thought about what Grandma would have wanted. She wouldn't have wanted this. She would have wanted forgiveness, reconciliation, family unity. But Grandma was gone now. And I was tired of being the family punching bag. On day 7, I finally responded to Michelle's text. Meet me at Stone's Coffee House tomorrow at 10 a.m. She replied within seconds, I'll be there. Thank you. Stone's Coffee House was a quiet place in a neighborhood halfway between my apartment and Michelle's office. I arrived early and claimed a corner table with a view of the door. Michelle arrived exactly on time, which surprised me. She looked terrible, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, minimal makeup, dark circles under her eyes. Her designer clothes were wrinkled. She saw me and hurried over, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Sarah. Thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure you would. I gestured to the empty chair. Sit. She sat, perching on the edge of the seat like she might need to run at any moment. We sat in silence for a moment. I sipped my coffee and waited. I'm sorry, she finally said. For what I said at the wake. It was cruel and it was wrong and I have no excuse. I was stressed about work and I took it out on you and that's not okay. Why were you stressed about work? He blinked, surprised by the question. We'd been having some cash flow issues. A few clients were late on payments and we had a big office expansion planned. I was worried about making payroll. But that's not an excuse for what I said to you. No, it's not. I know. She twisted her hands together. I've always been jealous of you if I'm being honest. That actually did surprise me. Jealous of me? Michelle, you've spent our entire lives treating me like I'm beneath you. I know. Because you're so effortless. Everything is so easy for you. You don't care what people think, you don't try to impress anyone, you just exist in your own world and you're happy there. Meanwhile, I've spent my whole life trying to prove myself, trying to be the successful one, the impressive one. And it's exhausting. I studied her face, trying to determine if she was being genuine or if this was just manipulation. That still doesn't excuse what you said. I know. I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just trying to explain why I've been such a bitch to you all these years. It's not because you did anything wrong. It's because I'm insecure and petty and I took it out on you. She pulled out a tissue and dabbed at her eyes. And now my business is falling apart and I don't even know why. I keep thinking maybe I deserve it. Like the universe is punishing me for being a terrible person. I took another sip of coffee. Tell me about your business problems. It started the day of the wake. Within hours, I lost 6 major contracts. Terminated. No warning, no explanation. Combined, those contracts represented almost $3 million in annual revenue. Then 3 smaller clients left because they heard I was losing accounts and they panicked. Now I'm down to maybe 40% of my previous revenue, and I've got a lease on a big office space and 15 employees I can't afford to pay. That's unfortunate. Sarah. She leaned forward. I know this is crazy, but the timing is too perfect. This all started right after I humiliated you. Right after I called you a charity case in front of everyone. And I keep thinking, what if you did this? What if you somehow have the power to hurt my business and I never knew it? I looked at her for a long moment. If I had that kind of power, Michelle, what would that mean about all the things you said about me? She went pale. It would mean I was completely wrong. About everything. Yes. It would. Oh my God. Her hands started shaking. It was you. Actually. Sarah, who are you? I set down my coffee cup. I'm someone who values privacy. Someone who doesn't feel the need to broadcast her success to the entire family. Someone who was perfectly content to let you think you'd built your business on your own merit. The contracts, those were your companies? Through various holding structures, yes. All 6 of them? Yes. For how long? 3 years. She slumped back in her chair like I'd physically hit her. 3 years. I've been living off your money for 3 years and I didn't even know it. While I was calling you a charity case, I was the one actually receiving charity. I wouldn't call it charity. Your firm did good work. You earned that money. But you could have hired anyone. You chose my firm. You kept choosing my firm. Why? I shrugged. Because your family. And because, despite everything, you are good at what you do. I was happy to support your business. Until you decided to humiliate me at Grandma's funeral. Michelle put her face in her hands. I'm the worst person alive. You're not the worst person alive. You're just someone who made a very bad choice. Can I fix this? She looked up at me with desperate eyes. Please. I'll do anything. I'll apologize to everyone in the family. I'll tell them the truth about what I said. Oh, I don't know what I can do, but please. My employees don't deserve to lose their jobs because I was an idiot. I thought about it. Really thought about it. This was my chance for complete revenge. I could say no. I could watch her business collapse. I could let everyone know that she'd been surviving on my money while calling me a failure. But what would that accomplish? Grandma wouldn't have wanted that. And honestly, I didn't want it either. Here's what's going to happen, I said finally. You're going to restructure your business. Downsize to something sustainable with your actual client base. No more overexpansion, no more living beyond your means. Get your finances in order. Hey, yes. I can do that. And you're going to apologize to me. Publicly. At the next family gathering. You're going to tell everyone exactly what you said was wrong and why it was wrong. I will. I promise. And Michelle? I leaned forward. If you ever speak to me that way again, if you ever try to humiliate me or belittle me or treat me like I'm less than you, this time I'll make sure your business actually does collapse. Permanently. Do you understand? She nodded frantically. I understand. I swear it'll never happen again. Good. I stood up and pulled out my phone. Sent a quick text to James Patterson. Restore 1 contract with Prestige PR Group. $400,000 annual retainer. 90-day termination clause. No negotiations. Michelle's phone buzzed. She looked at it and her eyes went wide. Is this? 1 contract. Not 6. Enough to keep you afloat while you rebuild. The rest of it is up to you. Thank you. Tears were streaming down her face now. Thank you so much. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. But I'm giving it to you anyway. Don't make me regret it. I left her sitting there and walked out into the morning sunshine. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Linda. Michelle just called me crying and babbling about how wrong she was about you. What on earth did you do? I smiled and typed back. Just had coffee. Talk soon. As I drove home, I thought about Grandma. About how she'd always believed in giving people second chances. About how she taught me that family was important even when they drove you crazy. I'd given Michelle a second chance. But I'd also set boundaries. Clear, firm boundaries that would protect me from being treated that way again. Maybe that was the real lesson Grandma had been trying to teach me all along. Not to be a doormat, but to be strong enough to stand up for yourself while still having the grace to forgive. I could live with that. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Michelle. I'll spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Thank you for being a better person than I ever was. I didn't respond. Some things didn't need a response. I just drove home, poured myself a glass of wine and got back to work. After all, I had a $47 million empire to run. And I preferred to do it quietly.